Hello, it's me again. This is part two of my 9-part series. Uh, so just so like you could know, this whole time I'm looking at another screen. That's why I'm looking away so much because I didn't want to memorize all of my script. So I decided I would just read it at the same time. And I'm gonna be wearing the same clothes for all of these videos because I am filming this all in one day because I didn't want to do it earlier or later. So this project is due like next week. So I mean, now's the perfect time, I guess. Just get it all out of the way and then focus on my other things. I have a lot of things I could probably be focusing on right now. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about The Shining. And of course, spoiler alert, if you've not seen The Shining and you want to see The Shining, don't watch this video yet. Watch The Shining and then watch my video. So The Shining is directed by Stanley Kubrick, and if we want some names, Stanley Kubrick directed Clockwork Orange, that one movie about that one war movie, Full Metal Jacket. He directed Full Metal Jacket. He directed some really important films. And it stars the one and only Jack Nicholson. He was a pretty big actor. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was a Joker one time, in Batman. And then Shelley Duvall. And I'm sorry, all I know Shelley Duvall from is Popeye, the live-action movie starring Robin Williams as Popeye. So, I mean, she did good in this one. So evidently she must be a good actress. So it's based off of a book of the same name written by Stephen King, which I've read the book. It's pretty good. It's really lengthy. Like if it's the words are really small and it's really big. Like the book is like that thick. So if you're not a reader, then there's no way you're gonna read The Shining. Oh wait, I was thinking of It. Okay, The Shining is a normal sized book. I don't know what I was just going on about there. So, anyways, the movie was filmed with a pretty small crew, so that way Kubrick could take as many takes as he wanted to get the special effects that he wanted, which evidently would stress out his actors because he worked them really, really hard for this. We'll talk more about that later, I think, in the fun facts. So, like the crew was exhausted, and so things behind the scenes were kind of tense. And that was especially true for Shelley Duvall, who had to shoot that infamous stair scene record-breaking 127 times. And I mean, for most of those scenes, she was crying. So, she had to cry for every take. So she was consistently dehydrated and tired, and she was also isolated and criticized by her other cast members. This was a specific order by Kubrick. He made them do that. He thought it would get a more raw performance from her, and I mean, it's kind of cruel. It's weird whenever I hear talking about it but from back then it seemed like she was really, like she didn't get along with him and like it was a really big issue. But nowadays she said she was kind of happy that it happened that way. I guess she thinks it made like it a really good performance for her. So Stephen King got the inspiration for this film by staying the night in the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. So it's based off of that hotel. But the exterior of the Overlook Hotel is filmed in Mount Hood, Oregon for the scenery. So there's two different hotels that they're using when they film this movie. So the plot of this movie is what we're going to get into next. It is about Jack Torrance, his wife Wendy, and their son Danny. And they all travel to stay at the Overlook Hotel during the winter so that Jack could be a caretaker there and so that he can have a quiet, isolated location to write his book he's been stuck on for a while. So while he's interviewing for the job, he's told of what happened with the last caretaker. The last caretaker's name was Delbert Grady, and he was staying there with his wife and his twin daughters. And one day, after like being secluded in the snow, because this is the winter, the Overlook Hotel basically has an off season because they're in the mountains and stuff. So whenever it's not good weather, no one's gonna go up there. No one's gonna go up to the mountains. So they close down, but they still need someone to take care of it because it's a really big place. So after a while, I guess cabin fever set in, and so Delbert Grady killed his family with an axe. Jack doesn't seem really fazed by this. He takes the job anyways, and he moves his family into the hotel for the winter. Before everyone else in the hotel leaves, they get to meet the head cook, Dick Halloran. And just to backtrack a little bit, Danny at the beginning of the film, their son Danny had told his doctor that he talks to a little boy in his mouth, named Tony, and Tony shows him things and tells him to do things. And while Wendy chalks it up to be an imaginary friend, Halloran is not only able to read his mind, but he is also able to talk to him through his mind. So, Halloran tells Danny that their powers are called the Shining, hence where the film got its name. But another sort of a cryptic moment where Danny asks him if he's scared of the hotel, and Halloran just gets really, really serious and tells him that there isn't anything in the hotel. So don't go looking anywhere because there is nothing here. So eventually the winter comes into full swing, and they don't have any more connections to the outside world other than a snow cap that they can use to drive through the snow, and a radio that they can connect to the police station with. Jack starts to get antsy, as you could probably guess. You probably know where this is going. He starts to get easily agitated, and he spends more time staring out windows menacingly than actually working on his book. At one point, he falls asleep at his desk, and he wakes up screaming as he was dreaming of killing his family. Wendy comes to comfort him after, he had a nightmare about killing them, but she quickly turns on him as she realizes that Danny has marks on his throat that someone strangled him. So Jack gets really upset about this because he didn't choke Danny, he thinks. So he goes into the deserted ballroom that they have there and talks to a fictional barkeeper, and he tells the bartender about his frustrations with Wendy, how she's been holding over his head this whole time, that he dislocated Danny's arm once whenever he was yanking him up from a mess he had made. But whenever he's starts moving around, we realize that the ballroom is completely filled, but it's not like normal stuff. It's people from the 1920s. It's like a real ballroom from the 1920s party. And while he's there, he meets someone. The man comes up and spills a drink on him, so they have to go to the bathroom to clean it up together. And that man turns out to be Delbert Grady, who's the original caretaker. And he tells Jack that Jack has always been the caretaker, not him, and that he needs to kill his family. Because I guess that's what you do if you're a caretaker. So Jack attacks Wendy, but Wendy manages to knock him out and drag him to the storage room in the kitchen. She tries to escape, but the snow cap and radio are both broken. Jack broke them. And then, sort of a confusing part about this, I always thought that maybe it was all in Jack's head. Maybe there wasn't actually any sort of supernatural element to it. Maybe they're all just going crazy. But there's no way to explain how, at one point in the film, Jack is talking to Grady again, like he can hear him in his mind. Wendy locked him in a storage room for food, and no one's in that area. There's only the three of them are actually there, him, his son, and his wife. But while he's in there, he asks for help, and Grady opens the door. So there has to be some sort of supernatural element in this, because the door cannot open by itself. It is locked, and it cannot be opened from the inside. So, I mean, that kind of changed my view on the movie. I don't know if that's interesting, maybe. So Jack picks up an axe, and despite Grady's wishes for him to kill his family, he only manages to kill one person, which is Halloran, who thought something was up. He was talking to them, but no one was answering, and he had gotten shining messages, in his head saying that something was amiss. But as soon as Halloran gets there, we watch him go all the way from his nice sunny home, wherever that's at, all the way down to the hotel. And as soon as he gets there, he just gets whacked by Jack. So he came in a snow cap, which is really good for Danny and Wendy because then they have somewhere to escape from. And they get Jack chased Danny into the giant hedge mage that's outside, and whenever he chases him, he loses Jack, and he runs out, and they find the snow cap, him and Wendy, and they take off, and they leave, and we never see them again. Jack still is in the maze, though, and he freezes to death out there. So the movie ends with a picture on the hotel's wall. Like, it's a really slow shot as it, like, comes up to the wall, and you can see there's a lot of pictures of old ballrooms, like ballroom parties, and it goes slowly up to this one that says party from 1920, and right in the center of, like, the end of the photo here is Jack. Jack is in the photo. So obviously that all leads to a couple really big questions, which is good, because to me a good horror film leaves a lot to the imagination and it makes you think. And so one of the biggest questions is, why is Jack in the photo at the end of the movie? First, it's important to discuss the history behind the hotel. Long before Grady murdered his family, the spot had been an Indian burial ground. So the hotel being built on top of a burial ground makes it cursed and haunted. If there's one thing we've learned from Pet Sematary, which is another Stephen King book, is that Indian burial grounds are not to be messed with. A popular theory is that the picture represents the hotel absorbing Jack's soul, taking him to its added collection of death. Kubrick, however, has actually given an explanation to the image, which is really rare. You know, if anyone knows about Kubrick, he doesn't just go ahead and give you like a full explanation of his films, but he did in this. Well, not in the full film. He gave an explanation on this, but nothing more. So he said that that image represents that Jack is a reincarnation of a past official at the Overlook Hotel. So this would make sense with Grady's earlier statement that Jack has been the caretaker all along. And like I said, Kubrick's explanation is a rarity, being that he doesn't usually give us meaning behind something. And that's true of the rest of the questions that audience had after viewing that movie. While there are a number of theories about the true meanings of The Shining, we may never know what Kubrick's main point was, because he only explained that, and then the rest is just left up to our imagination. So, an important part of this film is symbolism. Often a symbol is something that is shown or said multiple times, and that is exactly what mirrors are in The Shining. Here we go again. We had mirrors in Candyman, and then we had mirrors in The Shining. Both films use a lot of mirrors, and like that's, I'm not sure. I know it's something to do with reflection and like looking into yourself, but I'm not exactly sure about all this stuff. Like there's so many, when it comes to The Shining, whenever I try to think clearly of what any of it could mean, there's just way too much for me to actually make sense of it all. But I'll just give you another theory. So a big theory is that the movie is about the Indian burial ground and America's refusal to accept the genocides and other atrocities enacted by her past ancestors. So oftentimes brands and other things had Indians on them. So like in the storage room that Jack was locked in, there was a lot of food cans with in Native Americans on them. There was a lot of paintings with Native Americans in them. So, I mean, even the name of the hotel could be discussing the mistreatment of Native Americans. Because, I mean, it's called the Overlook Hotel, as in people are trying to overlook the injustices dealt out to those Indians. So another big idea, just to leave you with, is the relationship between Danny and Jack, or more generally, father and son. So Wendy mentions at the beginning of the film that Jack has once pulled Danny up too roughly and dislocated his arm. Throughout the movie, you never really see Jack interacting with his family. Like, he's isolated from the rest of the world, obviously, but then he sort of isolates himself from his family. So when Jack finally does go and sit with Danny for a little bit, It's a pretty tense scene because he puts Danny on his lap and he's talking to him, and he gives him half-hearted smiles and tries to assure him that he loves him more than the world. So it seems like maybe he really does care for his son, but then Danny, just like blank staring at him, just gives him yes or no responses, as if he's scared of something, like there's something really wrong with his father and he knows about it already. And at the end of the conversation, Danny asks him if he's going to hurt him and Wendy, which, I mean, that's not a very good thing for a child to ask their father. Obviously, something must really be going wrong if he feels the need to ask if he's going to be harmed by his dad. Danny might feel weary of his father due to things that Tony tells him, but people theorize that it might be because Jack has sexually harassed him. I'm not sure how much we can rely on those theories, but there's a whole lot of speculation between the relationships of Jack and Danny. And like I said, I love The Shining. It's a really good movie, but I just get so confused when I try to figure out any of this stuff. So I'm just telling you these theories. I'm leaving them with you. You can decide what you think, like what everything in the movie means, what you think it means. But those are just some theories. So, that was a bit heavy. I think it's high time we switch to the fun facts. So here's an offhand one. Stephen King sleeps with the lights on. I guess his monsters are too scary, even for him. King also famously dislikes the movie. He especially dislikes Shelley Duvall's performance because his novel has Wendy being like in his book, she's like strong and resourceful, but the movie portrays her as a crying, screaming mess. Like throughout the second half of the film, whenever he starts to attack his family, Wendy is like, she's screaming and crying and she's wielding a knife, and she doesn't seem that strong in that moment, although you can't really expect too much from a person being thrown into such a situation like that. And that's really the fact that he doesn't like Duvall's performance is really sad for her, especially how much she had to go through to get that role. I don't think that he was taking it out on her, though. I don't think he was saying because of her he didn't like the movie. He was probably saying that he feels it wasn't carried out the way it should have been carried out. So King wrote his own screenplay for the film originally, but Kubrick turned it down, and instead he hired another novelist, Diane Johnson. So during the shooting, Danny Lloyd, who's the child actor who played Danny, he was never really aware that he was in a horror movie until like 10 or 11. Kubrick was very careful with Danny. Danny was obviously a young child, and they really didn't want to traumatize him by showing him any of the scary things in the film. So afterwards, they just told him he was in a drama film, and he didn't learn about the truth until much later in life. Also, he didn't become an actor after that. He became a doctor, I think, of sorts. So, the song at the beginning of the movie is Dies Irae, and that song is also means the Day of Wrath. So, definitely some suspense there. So, the importance of The Shining is about its involvement in the human psyche. So, from a technical standpoint, the movie shines, no cheesy jump scares or lazy, unoriginal plots, but instead a slow-burning tension fest with unique visuals and scenes that are as confusing as they are interesting. I've seen this movie about 20 times, and that's because this movie feels fresh every time. There's always something new to see or focus on, especially if you read up about like the different theories involving it, and the fact that this is so rewatchable is what makes this movie stand out. So, now that we've wrapped this up, we're going to take a break in the next video from serious dark films and enjoy some lighthearted comedy instead. So next video, I'll be discussing Shaun of the Dead and how to properly make a comedy parody. Thanks for watching!